The warm Roman morning drifted slowly over the city, filtering through a pale haze that hovered above the tiled rooftops and the curling lines of aqueducts. Long before the larger markets stirred awake, and long before the clamor of senators, merchants, and household slaves thickened the streets, certain quiet professions had already begun their work. Professions so modest and specialized that the centuries rarely bothered to preserve their names. Yet in their time, these workers shaped the rhythm of Rome in ways both subtle and essential, their crafts woven into the city like threads so fine that most no longer noticed them. In the soft light of dawn, as the air still tasted faintly of dew and cooled stone, they moved through their routines with steady hands and hushed intentions. One such figure, a young man named Silanus, stepped into the street carrying a small wooden case of tools and tiny glass jars. He was an unctor's lapidum, a polisher of memorial stones, a profession so small and humble that even the stonecutters barely remembered to name it. Silanus walked slowly toward the necropolis outside the city walls, where he would trace the carved names of the departed and smooth the edges of fading letters. His work was not one of artistry or loud skill, but of gentle preservation. He coaxed clarity from erosion with linen cloth, fine sand, and oil. As he walked, the city around him seemed barely awake, the muffled footfalls of a baker's assistant the only company on the quiet road. The smell of warm bread drifted faintly through the cooling air, but Silanus paid little mind to it. His profession demanded a detachment from the living world, a devotion to the patience of stone. Farther inside the city, another quiet worker began her day within a shaded courtyard, where thick laurel trees muffled the noise of the surrounding neighborhood. Her name was Emiliana, and she belonged to a nearly forgotten craft. She was a cura pendularum, a mender of travelers' cloaks. Rome hosted countless visitors, pilgrims, merchants, messengers, and their garments wore down with endless miles of dust and sun. Emiliana worked with needles so slender they could slip through worn wool without leaving a visible trace. And she used dyes prepared from crushed berries and the bark of certain trees to restore faded hems. Her stall was nothing grand, just a wooden bench beneath a vine-covered trellis, yet people sought her out because she worked with quiet precision and never hurried. The morning light fell in gentle patches across her workspace, illuminating spools of thread in muted reds, browns, and greens. She would sit for hours, listening to the distant hum of the city, her fingers moving in a slow rhythm that seemed more like breathing than labor. On the eastern side of Rome, near a street that always smelled faintly of vinegar and aging clay, another specialist began his daily routine. Publius was a Sarcinarius, a pack saddle adjuster whose expertise lay in ensuring that beasts of burden, mules, donkeys, even the occasional camel brought in by traders, carried their loads comfortably. Many imagined the profession trivial, but a poorly balanced pack could injure an animal or cause a merchant's goods to spill across a crowded street. Publius worked in a narrow stall filled with strips of leather, bundles of stuffing, and wooden frames smoothed by years of handling. In the early hours, he checked the stitching of straps and listened carefully to merchants describing the weight and nature of their cargo. He rarely spoke loudly. His voice blended into the soft rustling of leather and the gentle snorts of animals waiting outside. A thin veil of dust always hung in the air around him, shimmering slightly when caught by the rising sun. Near the Tiber River, where the smell of water mingled with reeds and distant fish markets, lived another quiet Roman whose profession rarely survived the memory of history. Her name was Livia, and she was one of the equarii, women responsible for inspecting clay water pipes in private homes. Though the great aqueducts are remembered in marble illustrations and surviving ruins, the smaller conduits that fed individual households depended on the eyes and ears of people like Livia. She would tap gently along the clay lines with a small bronze rod, listening for hollowness or cracks. Her senses were finely tuned to subtle changes in vibration and sound. Most of her work took place just after sunrise, when homes were quieter, and the soft trickle of early water use could help her identify weak spots. Her profession required a calm patience. She moved slowly from home to home, her sandals brushing across polished thresholds, always carrying a small pouch of sealing resin and linen strips for quick repairs. Not far from the river, in the shadow of a modest temple, an older man began the careful work of preparing wax tablets for reuse. His name was Gaius, and he practiced the nearly forgotten craft of serrarius reparator, a restorer of writing tablets. Many Romans, students, merchants, magistrates, used wax tablets daily, reheating and smoothing them when the writing grew messy. Yet some tablets were too valuable or too finely made to trust to untrained hands. Gaius melted the wax gently over a small brazier, the soft scent of honey drifting through his workshop as he mixed fresh wax with the scraped remnants of old text. His days unfolded quietly, the slow drip of warm wax marking time as predictably as a water clock. Sometimes children passing by would pause to watch the wax glisten beneath his tools, but Gaius seldom looked up. His task required focus, and he took comfort in the constancy of his craft. Across the city, in a district known for small shops and tidy courtyards, lived an artisan whose trade lay in caring for bronze household items. Her name was Tertia, and she was a Nutrix heiress, a caretaker of bronzeware. Over time, bronze darkened with use, developed greenish patches, or lost its smoothness. Wealthy families relied on someone like Tertia to restore the sheen of their lamps, bowls, mirrors, and statuettes. Her workshop smelled faintly of oil and crushed pumice, and her hands bore the subtle metallic scent of bronze even after washing. She polished in rhythmic motions, her cloth circling slowly, almost meditatively, around each object. When the morning sun entered through the small window of her workshop, the scattered pieces of metal caught the light and shimmered softly, casting warm reflections across the walls. In a quieter corner of Rome, where small gardens grew between rows of modest homes, lived an elderly woman named Marcia, who worked as a florum ordatrix, an arranger of household flowers. Her profession was neither religious nor ceremonial. She simply prepared daily floral pieces for homes that wished to maintain a sense of calm beauty. She knew the seasonal rhythms of every bloom and leaf. In the mornings, she gathered dew-covered branches of laurel, sprigs of rosemary, soft-petaled roses, and small clusters of wildflowers brought by neighborhood children. Marcia arranged them with unhurried care, balancing colors and textures the way others might balance ledgers or grain weights. Her small baskets smelled of mingled herbs and sunlight, and the people who purchased her arrangements often said that her work softened the atmosphere of their homes. Along a curved road near the Forum, within a stone archway that echoed softly whenever footsteps passed, worked a man named Severus, known as a sibillator vicorum, a street whistler. His task was simple, yet surprisingly necessary. He whistled softly in long, lilting tones as he walked ahead of small processions or deliveries to alert pedestrians without startling them. Rome's streets could be narrow and crowded, and wagons or litters sometimes needed a clear path. Severus used carefully practiced patterns of sound, never too sharp, never too loud, to signal approach. He began at dawn, his gentle notes weaving through the morning air like thin ribbons. Some residents found comfort in his presence, recognizing the familiar melody that indicated the steady awakening of their neighborhood. Near the same district, another unnoticed laborer prepared for his day. He was a custos lucernarium, a caretaker of household and street lamps. Though Rome had no unified public lighting system, certain affluent neighborhoods paid for men like him to ensure that lamps were filled with oil, wicks trimmed, soot cleared from bronze or clay surfaces. He completed most of his work at dusk, but mornings were spent preparing supplies and inspecting lamp frames. The faint smell of olive oil clung to his clothes, and his hands bore tiny dark stains from soot that no scrubbing could entirely remove. He worked slowly, with a gentle respect for the fragile flames he tended each evening. Not far away, a man named Flaccus practiced one of the rarest crafts in the city. He was a temperator vini, a wine adjuster hired to balance the flavors of household wine stores. Unlike celebrated vintners or public merchants, Flaccus worked quietly inside private cellars. He tasted the aging amphorae, noted their strengths and shortcomings, and adjusted them with herbs, watered ratios, or small additions of resin. His work demanded patience, for wine responded slowly to modification. Mornings in his cellar were cool and humid, filled with the earthy scent of clay, grape must, and faint herbal notes drifting from his small satchels of flavoring agents. He seldom hurried. Each amphora seemed to him like a sleeping creature that needed adjustment without disturbance. In another district, nestled between the scattered workshops of metalworkers and leather craftsmen, lived a man named Naso, whose profession existed almost nowhere else in the empire. He was an odorator demorum, a perfumer of homes, not through burning incense for ceremonies, but through the daily scenting of private rooms. Wealthy families hired him to craft gentle fragrances using crushed petals, resinous woods, herbs, and oils. His mixtures were never overpowering. Instead, they lingered subtly, blending with the natural smells of home. His mornings were spent grinding ingredients slowly with a stone mortar, the rhythmic motion echoing softly in his workshop. Warm, floral, resinous notes rose into the air as he worked, filling the small space with a delicate calm that followed him wherever he went. As the sun lifted higher and the city warmed, each of these quiet workers continued in their own gentle rhythms. They moved through Rome like soft currents beneath the surface of a bustling sea, supporting the life of the city in ways most people never noticed. Their tools were simple, their voices quiet, their labor steady and unhurried. Yet without them, many small comforts, conveniences, and daily assurances of Roman life would fade. The day unfolded slowly. Markets grew louder, Children ran through alleys, and distant carts rumbled along the paving stones. But in the interwoven corners of Rome, within shaded courtyards, cool workshops, and narrow streets, these rare professionals maintained their measured pace. Silanus continued polishing inscriptions until the letters shone softly in the afternoon light. Emiliana finished repairing a frayed cloak before handing it gently to a grateful traveler. Publius adjusted a pack saddle to ensure a merchant's mule walked comfortably down the dusty road. Livia repaired a crack in a clay water pipe and felt the smooth, reassuring flow of water beneath her fingertips. Gaius scraped cooled wax and prepared a tablet for another day of writing. Tertia restored the deep glow of a bronze lamp. Marcia arranged flowers that filled a home with fragrance. Severus whistled down a busy street, gently parting the crowds. The lamp caretaker polished wicks for the coming night. Flaccus tested a new blend of herbs in a young wine. Nas prepared a soft, herbal scent that would linger in a quiet atrium. Each worker belonged to a part of Rome rarely written into scrolls or carved into monuments. Yet their routines shaped the city's heartbeat. In the slow unfolding of their days, in the unhurried movements of hands tending to stone, cloth, wood, bronze, wax, flowers, wine, and scent, they nurtured a quieter dimension of Roman life. Their forgotten professions formed a tapestry as delicate and essential as the fine threads Emiliana used to mend a traveler's cloak. As dusk approached and the warm glow of evening softened Rome's edges, the city seemed to breathe with a steady calm. The workers of rare crafts made their way home with unhurried steps, carrying the faint traces of their materials, the scent of oil, the dust of stone, the fragrance of flowers, the lingering breath of wax. Their roles rarely entered the grand stories of Rome, but in the gentle rhythm of their days, they upheld a quieter kind of legacy, one of care, patience, and the simple beauty of steady work.